Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of This Week in Magic Online Finance. Now, usually in this segment, we check in on the news, take a look at what the biggest story is in Magic, but this week there wasn't one major story that dominated Magic, so I figured I'd take some time to check in on the markets, see how Standard and Modern and Legacy are doing on MTGO. First of all, the Standard Index. And folks, as you well know by now, it's not all that pretty at the moment. Standard Index has been dropping for months, it's continuing to drop, and the only card that's really worth its salt right now in the format is Arclight Phoenix, which still continues to head toward that 60 ticket mark, which is ludicrous, but it's a card that sees a ton of play in Modern, and because a lot of people were playing Standard on Arena instead of MTGO when it was released, well, there just aren't a lot of copies out there right now. That's the biggest reason why that card is expensive and is going to remain expensive for a while. Otherwise, there are only a couple of cards in Standard that are even as high as 10 tickets. Cards like Hydroid, Krasis, and Nexus of Fate and Kaya, but those are the exceptions and not the rule. Right now, it really feels like Set Redemption is the one thing holding the Standard market up. Set Redemption does create a nice price floor for Standard because if it gets below a certain price, people are just going to buy thousands and thousands of sets and redeem them and sell them, and then the prices will come back up. But that really does seem to be the thing that is bolstering Standard at the moment. In terms of actual format playability, not so much. People are playing Standard a lot more on Arena than they are on MTGO, and the prices are reflecting that. Now, this is not all doom and gloom, because one thing that low Standard prices mean is, well, it's really cheap to play Standard on MTGO. And look, I get it. Arena is just a more fun play experience. I play most of my Standard on Arena too at the moment, but it can be an expensive slog to get more than one or two competitive decks on Arena, whereas on MTGO, it's actually pretty easy and cheap. I mean, right now, Mono Blue Tempo, one of the 2 or 3 best decks in the format, can be bought for under 10 tickets. You can buy decks like Mono Red Aggro and Azorius Aggro for around 20 tickets apiece. This is incredibly cheap, and you should be taking advantage of this. Not because it's a great long-term investment or anything, but because it's one of the cheapest ways we've ever had to play top-tier Magic. On the flip side, both Modern and Legacy prices are continuing to rise. And we're going to talk more specifically about Modern a little bit later, but for the past couple of months, it's worth noting that Eternal prices have gone up. And this pretty much backs up my hypothesis that during the Arena crash, Modern and Legacy prices dropped a little too far, a little too fast. People like playing on Arena, I like playing on Arena, but you can't play Modern and Legacy on Arena, and you're not going to be able to anytime soon. Because of that, I expect Modern and Legacy prices to continue slowly rising on MTGO well into the summer. Let's move on now to gaining ground, where in Standard it was once again Kaya Orzhov Usurper, gaining about 3 tickets from 13 up to 16. And there is a little bit of play backing this up. I mean, Kaya has actually moved into the main deck in a lot of the Esper control builds in Standard, and perhaps more importantly, she started to see some play in black and white based decks in Modern. Of course, it's Modern demand that's really driving Standard prices right now, and my guess is that Kaya has seen enough play in Modern to make her one of the better choke points for Set Redemption. Now, I still don't trust any Standard card long-term right now, but Kaya's curve is still heading up. And cards that are expensive because of Set Redemption, they don't really have to follow the normal rules of supply and demand. They just need to be around so that it's not a no-brainer for people to just buy out thousands and thousands of copies of everything, redeem them, and sell them in paper. So if Kaya ends up being the main choke point in this set, if it keeps trending up as Hydroid Krasis keeps on trending down, then Kaya can be really about as expensive as she ever needs to be. She could end up somewhere in the 20 to 25 ticket range, maybe even a little higher. Just know that this isn't really based on the amount of play she's seeing, and I definitely don't trust holding Kaya for very long. I'm going to be paying very close attention to this card going forward, and just like Hydroid Krasis, if you see that card start to tick down, it may be indicative of a greater fall to come. Let's move over to Modern, where things are a lot more hunky-dory. The card that gained the most ground in Modern this week was yet again Mox Opal, gaining another 10 tickets and surging from 40 up to 50. Now, in last week's video, I predicted Mox Opal hitting about the 50 ticket mark and then leveling off, and that's more or less what I expected to happen. It seems to have peaked. I wouldn't be surprised actually if Mox Opal ends up being one of the bigger losers next week, only because I think a non-trivial number of Mox Opal owners are going to dump their copies onto the marketplace. The card has more or less doubled over the past 2.5 weeks, and in the current economic climate, a lot of people seem to be saying, yeah, I'm gonna lock in these gains when I can. So even though I think Mox Opal is pretty robust, I think it's got a lot of good play metrics backing up its gain, I still wouldn't be surprised if there's at least a temporary dip in the price over the next couple of days as speculator copies hit the market. Let's move on now to our biggest loser, where in Standard it was Nexus of Fate, which swan dived a full 8 tickets from 18 down to 10. And to me, this is the result of two connected trends. First of all, Nexus of Fate, it's not available for set redemption. I mean, Core Set 2019 is out of the window anyway. Nexus of Fate is not technically a real part of that set since it was a promo, so you couldn't redeem it anyway. Anyway, it's not affected by set redemption, and as we know, the floor for Standard-only cards that can't be redeemed, it's pretty low. There's no real floor on how far this thing can drop. I'm expecting it's probably not going to go much lower than about 5 or 6 tickets. Second of all, the Bant and Simic Nexus decks, they really have dropped off in popularity. A few weeks ago, these were the 3rd or 4th most popular deck in Standard. Right now, 10th. That's after Selesnya tokens. That is a low bar. So there are real reasons why Nexus of Fate has dropped in price, more than just craziness having to do with MTGO or Arena. And if the card is going to rebound, something like that's going to have to change. The deck itself is actually going to have to become more popular. Let's move on now to Modern, where our biggest loser this week was Teleria West, dropping about 4.5 tickets from 17 down to 12.5. And this is mostly the result of a spike evening itself out. This card was just 3 tickets back in December, went up to 17 tickets based on hype from 4-color Prison in Modern. But as we discussed with Mox Opal, a lot of these 4-color Prison cards spiked last week or this week, and they're starting to even themselves out now. I expect Teleria West will probably settle in somewhere in the 8 to 10 ticket range, so it is a little bit farther to fall, but it's still going to remain much, much higher than that 3 ticket mark it was at back in December. Now, the sneak of the week this week is Kalitas, Trader of Get, a mythic from Oath of the Gatewatch that was very strong in Standard in its day, but appeared to be a Standard-only card. Not so anymore. It was about 2 tickets a few weeks ago. It's up over 7 now and continuing to rise. This is primarily because of a brand new rock deck in Modern that seems to be doing pretty well. It burst onto the scene a little while ago, it won a Star City Games regional event last weekend, and it runs 2 copies of Kalitas. If the rock continues to catch on, and I expect that it will, this card will probably jump over the 10 ticket mark as early as this week and be stable over that number for quite some time to come. You should definitely pick up a few copies now if you can. As always, we're going to end the week by taking a look at the MTGO Trader sales data over the past 7 days. And this gives us a great idea of which cards are actually selling the best right now, regardless of price increases or decreases. Looking at overall sales by volume, it's clear that there is a shift happening toward Modern right now. This list, even up through the past few weeks, has been dominated by cheap Standard cards. Standard commons, Standard uncommons. Right now we're seeing a lot of Modern things rallying toward the top of this list. Cards like Faithless Looting and Ancient Stirrings and Fatal Push. I don't expect a ton of major gains from these cards, but it does hammer home what we've been saying all video, that the Modern index is on the rise, Modern staples are going up, while Standard, people aren't playing a ton of it on MTGO. Moving on to overall sales by value, and the divide is even more stark. There are actually only 2 Standard cards in the top 40 on this list, and both of them are on there primarily because of Modern, Arclight Phoenix and Assassin's Trophy. So yeah, this doesn't bode well for the immediate future of Standard on MTGO, but Modern is still doing just fine. And that's all I got for you this week. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Chaz Andres, and I will see you next Monday morning for another episode of This Week in Magic Online Finance.